People who have great fitness, great health, they're not lucky. They don't just fall into that optimal body composition. They do the work that allows them to succeed in that area. They're disciplined, they're commitment, they say no to certain foods. We've gotten in this mindset where we think we should be able to eat whatever we want, whenever we want it, in whatever amounts. And I'm here to tell you that that's just not possible. For me, there are things that I don't eat. I eat at specific times. I eat specific foods. I know my husband is the same way. And whenever I meet anyone who has excellent health, they're focused on the foods that serve them. Eating foods that don't love you back, eating foods that don't serve you is not a form of self-respect. It's like a bad relationship, and sometimes we have to let those bad relationships go to really get what serves us.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today we're going to discuss the common reasons why so many people drop weight only to regain it. Research shows that 85 to 95% of people who drop weight only put the weight back on. So I want to talk about the physiological reasons, the metabolic reasons why this might happen. I want to talk about the psychological reasons, the mental, emotional, mindset, as to why we so often drop this weight only to put it back on. Today, we'll dive into strategies that will help you maintain the weight loss that you've worked so hard to achieve for the long term. And then we'll also dive into what are normal weight fluctuations and how you can avoid the pitfalls that can often cause this darn weight regain. It's interesting that, like I said before, 85 to 95% of people who drop weight only put it back on. Our research shows through the clients who come into PhD weight loss that 85% of those clients who drop weight and participate in our maintenance program keep the weight off within 3 pounds. And I want to share some stories to start with you of clients who I see who maintain their weight loss and what they do, and those who might struggle with it before they even came into PhD, but also during the process with us, so that we can pinpoint the commonalities of those who successfully keep the weight off for good. A few client stories. I had Jeff, and he would come in every single week for a very long time for his weigh-ins. And then he went to once a month, and he still comes in 3 years later, once a month. And for him, it was a big lifestyle shift, and he was completely disciplined to this way of life. It became his new identity. For Bobby, it was all about understanding. She just didn't understand what she was doing and what she needed to eat to keep the weight off for good. And once she got that understanding, oh my gosh, she would be so disciplined. She came in and continues to do so for her weigh-ins. And she would come in with a list of questions and a bag of food that she wanted us to check out and look at the food label. She was just totally invested and committed. I have Leanne, and she was ritualistic around her schedule and her exercise. She too would come in every month for her weigh-in, and if she would pop up above 5 pounds, she would ask why. She would just hit us with questions, figure out what to do, and with our guidance would come up with an action plan and drop that 5 pounds to hit within her sweet spot. I have Chris, and he dropped over 187 pounds. And for him, it was an identity shift. He changed the people he communicated with. He understood that environment was number one influence for him. His friends changed, and he was okay letting go of the old and establishing the new that would help him live in alignment with his new values and standards. For our nationwide clients, these are clients who aren't near brick and mortar, and we have nationwide clients now who live all over the country and all over the world, honestly. And they check in with us during their maintenance program through texting support, email support. So we have Scott, and he would regularly check in every month, and he continues to do so, and he just reports his weight through our texting platform. Randy, he would always report his weight, how he's feeling, and if he had any questions. And he would watch all of the learning webinars that we provided. So anything that he could learn, he was just a sponge. So here is an example of his report in. He would say, weight this morning was 161.2. I'm feeling good. We were away at Christmas, but watched our intake and stayed away from the sweet stuff. No questions this month. Of Dawn, and she never misses her monthly weigh-ins, and she would reach out, and here's an example. Number 136 this morning, able to exercise with no pain and no questions. And then we have those clients who struggle, and some clients just come in to us, and they have tried everything. And a lot of the times why I feel that it hasn't worked for them is because of two reasons. One, the meal plan and the plan that they followed wasn't nutritionally sound. The fad right now, or something that, I don't necessarily want to call it a fad, but it kind of is Ozempic. A lot of people are coming in and just realizing they don't want to be on Ozempic forever, or it's causing too much GI distress. And it wasn't a component of a nutritionally sound meal plan. They just restricted their calories. They dropped a lot of muscle mass, and they are starting to put on all the weight, or they have put on the weight plus more. Or back in the day, it was HCG when I first started working with clients in the weight loss space, and they would eat 800 calories a day and then go back to eating a normal, healthy amount of calories and just put all the weight back on. So if you have dropped weight only to regain it and you followed one of these types of programs, or it wasn't nutritionally sound, it was just based on eating as little as possible or moving as much as possible, that is a big reason why you struggle with the regain. Another common reason, I think the most common reason we see why people put weight back on, is because they lose that accountability. They stop the commitment of checking in with us. You saw of all, I think 10 people that I mentioned, they are religious and disciplined and committed with the accountability and checking in. They're taking personal responsibility and reporting in with their support system, which happens to be us. But if you have dropped weight through other means, that's great. Huge congratulations on that, and making sure that you continue to have the support you need and remain accountable to somebody or some group to just continue to help you with that. Because we know that dropping weight is one thing, but keeping it off is a whole other beast. So we have, for example, Diane. She just stopped checking in with us. And when I chatted with her, she said she was tired of it. She had a deprivation kind of scarcity mindset, which will get us in trouble. And she hit menopause at the same time. She had these unrealistic expectations. Her hormones shifted, which also can just blast your mindset for a while. She dove deeper into anxiety, a little bit of depression, and she saw 10 pounds of the 20 pounds she dropped creep back up pretty darn quickly. We have Roberta. She dropped 90 pounds, and right when she hit maintenance, she had 3 people pass away. 2 family members get sick. She was the caregiver, and it was just so early on in her transition to maintenance, she didn't have the skill set practiced long enough to help her keep the weight off. But she came back a few months later. She had put on about 20 pounds. We error correct, and now she's on the journey of dropping that for good. Sue, another client who just really struggled with food addiction, dropped 90 pounds, put some of it back on, and now is seeing, in addition, working with us, a therapist to help her really work through that binge eating disorder, the addiction piece. And then Chris is another client. And, I've said this before, that our environment is our number one influence on our mindset and our ability to achieve results. And for him, no one else in his family made the decision to change their lifestyle. And the environment was a big piece for him. He had a really hard time, but he came back with his wife, and now they're working together so they can both drop the weight. It's much easier when you have support, but it is totally possible to drop the weight and keep it off. Even if your family members don't do it with you, you just have to be even more committed and even more disciplined in your own standards. Then we have a client, Susie, an example of one of our nationwide clients. She completed her first check-in maintenance, but then did not check in with us until 6 months later. We continue to reach out. Every month, I always send an email to all of our clients. Hey, check in, report your weight, report any kind of progress, and ask us any questions. And so 6 months later, she checked in and said, oh my gosh, I've been out of practice. I am struggling with old overeating patterns. I lost my consistency, and I'm going to start checking in every month because I know I need that. So what is most important for you to understand is that dropping the weight is one thing and keeping it off is a whole other situation. It's a whole other practice.
Hey guys, just a quick reminder about GlucoCut Plus, my specially formulated supplement to support your metabolism throughout your fat loss journey. With patented ingredients, it aids in consistent weight loss and boosts energy by supporting your thyroid, burning fat, and maintaining lean muscle mass. Weight loss can stress your body, but I created GlucoCut Plus to have your back. Visit dr.ashleywellness.com and use code Ashley10 for 10% off your first purchase or 20% off your first subscription order with free shipping. Plus, enjoy a 30-day money-back guarantee. Back to the show.
Keeping the weight off for good requires commitment and discipline. It's not a simple resolution. It's about creating these standards for yourself that you don't waver outside of. It's a daily process. You've got to recognize that it does not happen overnight. It's a daily recommitment to yourself, daily discipline, and it's a continued practice. Success in anything doesn't happen overnight. Success in your business, with your finances, success in love, success in relationship. It's all about the long game, and you've got to recognize that. The same thing goes for your health. People who have great fitness, great health, they're not lucky. They don't just fall into that optimal body composition. They do the work that allows them to succeed in that area. They're disciplined, they're commitment, they say no to certain foods. We've gotten in this mindset where we think we should be able to eat whatever we want, whenever we want it, in whatever amounts. And I'm here to tell you that that's just not possible. For me, there are things that I don't eat. I eat at specific times. I eat specific foods. I know my husband is the same way. And whenever I meet anyone who has excellent health, they're focused on the foods that serve them. Eating foods that don't love you back, eating foods that don't serve you is not a form of self-respect. It's like a bad relationship, and sometimes we have to let those bad relationships go to really get what serves us. So in the process of dropping weight, it is about letting go of the foods you say you love that don't love you back. Saying no to certain foods is actually a form of self-respect. It's not a form of deprivation or restriction. It's changing that mindset and remaining disciplined and committed to your standards. It's also important to understand that weight loss is an addiction recovery process for a lot of people. Relapses happen. Relapses are a part of the story for many people. I want you to know it doesn't have to be a part of your story, so I'm not allowing you to have an excuse around it. But if it does happen, that's okay. All that matters is that you get back up on the horse, you dust yourself off, and you try again. Remember that a relapse can be looked at as a win. You can stack that as a win. It's an opportunity for you to get stronger, for you to learn more about yourself. So if you are in the process of a relapse, a regain, that is okay. You dust yourself off, you get back up on the horse, you be willing to try again and do it differently this time around. All that a relapse means is that you need more practice. And with more practice, the relapses will reduce in severity and frequency. So let's dive into some of the common causes of a relapse so you know where to start. So let's start with the physiological reasons, the metabolic reasons why we might be in a state of relapse. And I will tell you that 99% of the time a relapse is also psychological. So even if you find in these here a physiological reason where you're like, oh my gosh, that's me, you need to stay tuned and listen to the psychological reasons, because that's probably the larger reason why you're actually in the relapse to begin with. So starting off with the physiological. Number one is if you're not following a nutritionally sound meal plan. Let's say, you're in a program where it's severely restricting calories, or you're utilizing Ozempic without a lifestyle intervention as well, or HCG, or any kind of system that really depends upon just eating less and potentially moving more. This can tank your metabolism. And that's the second one, is you could be experiencing a metabolic adaptation that slows your metabolism. So that makes it easier to gain weight. So as a part of my PhD, as a part of my doctoral work, what I did was I took two groups of individuals. I took a group of recreationally active individuals, and I pair matched those with professional athletes. So they had the same amount of muscle, they were the same age, the same gender, and you would think that the professional athletes who were working out, exercising, performing in their sport would eat a lot more and have a higher, healthier metabolic rate, right? Well, in looking deeper, the professional athletes actually ate significantly less, and their metabolic rate was depressed significantly compared to the recreationally active, healthy, pair-matched individuals. What that tells you is if you severely restrict your calories and or exercise a ton to create that significant calorie deficit, your body is going to adapt to protect itself. It's going to pull back. It's not going to allow your metabolism to deal with extraneous calories very easily. If you do eat additional calories, you're going to start to witness fat gain. This happens when we chronically diet and chronically undereat. And then it's going to pull on your other body systems as well. So these athletes that I was studying, they were females. And so as a result, they had irregular menstrual cycles, or they were amenorrheic, which means they lost their menses altogether. And they had bone density issues. So they didn't even have enough calories to support a healthy menstrual cycle or healthy bone growth. So your body truly does adapt. There can be hormonal changes that are going on. If you consistently restrict your calories, we can have ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, go up, which means that you're hungry all the time because the body is signaling you to eat more. And leptin can drop. Leptin is the hormone that tells you that you're full, and that can drop. So you're hungrier more often. You have cravings and you think, oh my gosh, I'm just so weak. I just need to overcome these cravings. But your body doesn't make mistakes. Your body is telling you something. Your body is guiding you, but we often just try to stomp out what the guidance it is that it's giving us. In addition to that, we could be going through some kind of hormonal shift due to aging, like menopause. Menopause can throw us out of whack, like the client I was discussing who had this mindset shift simultaneously with menopause. And when estrogen decreases, we have an increased risk of putting fat on the belly. We feel bloated. It doesn't feel good. And we think, oh, what's the point? It's just miserable, right? So hormonal changes are big. We can have genetics at play. And I was even hesitant to include this in the list because we can often use genetics as an excuse. Genetics aren't an excuse. They're not a death sentence. They are just an awareness sign to you that you need to take immediate action. You are not allowed to have excuses and sophisticated procrastinations in there if you have genetics on your side. An example is my husband. His immediate family, almost all of them have struggled or are currently struggling with morbid obesity or have gone through a weight loss program and worked very hard and stay very disciplined to keep the lean shape that they've achieved. The same thing goes for him. You know, he has this genetic predisposition. He does not tolerate carbohydrates very well at all. Even when he's very spot on, he's right on that borderline of pre-diabetes. He's disciplined in his workout and what he eats, and he just is aware that this is part of his life and is an opportunity for him to learn and grow and achieve some kind of discipline toward what he needs to do to have the optimal level of health that he desires for his body. So if you struggle like my husband, like Doug does, with genetics, know that it is just an opportunity to learn more, and it is a sign for you to take immediate action and not wait any longer. Another reason why you might witness regain is if you have body composition shifts, like you've lost muscle mass as a result of doing something where you severely restrict calories. I don't mean to pick on Ozempic. I just have seen a lot of people come in who have really struggled as a result of it. Research shows that a lot of people who are taking Ozempic, if they're not careful, if they don't do it in a smart way, then up to 2/3 of the amount of weight that they're dropping is coming from muscle mass rather than fat loss. And muscle mass is your predictor of longevity. It's your metabolic currency. So everything that you're doing right now as you continue to age, if you're dropping weight or you're maintaining your weight loss, needs to be focused on maintaining your muscle mass. And another reason why physiologically you might be experiencing weight gain is if you didn't fully collapse your belly fat, that visceral fat. I talk about visceral fat almost in every episode that I record. If you haven't heard about visceral fat or the belly fat, in 3 sentences or less, it's basically this fat that fills up the organs. It wraps around them. It gets its own blood supply. It gets its own oxygen supply, and it secretes its own hormones. And all it wants to do is grow and get fatter. And it's like a tumor, and it takes over. And so if you've only dropped a portion of your excess fat weight, it's like leaving half of the tumor there. It's just a matter of time for it to come back. It's analogous to shaving the top of a weed and leaving the root. It's just a matter of time for the wheat to grow back. So what I encourage you to do, if you're on your weight loss journey, is to make sure that you fully collapse that belly fat, that you don't have that belly fat working against you anymore, so you have your highest chance of success in keeping the weight off for good. Okay, so those are all the physiological, the metabolic reasons why you might be struggling with weight regain. How about the psychological, the mental and emotional aspects? This is huge. And What I've found in working with over 7,000 people, helping them drop the weight and keeping it off over 15 plus years, what I've found is there's two aspects to dropping weight successfully. I always say that losing weight is a process of letting go. We've got to let go of the excess fat weight that's holding us back and also the emotions that are tied to it. So let's say that your weight is dropping down here in a linear fashion, but you're not doing any of the work on your mindset, on your lifestyle, on your habits and behaviors. That's staying in a flat line. Well, it's just a matter of time for your weight to come right back up to those old lifestyles, that scarcity fixed mindset. In order to drop the weight and keep it there, to keep it off, the mindset and all of those emotions that are tied to it also have to drop off as well. If it doesn't drop off at the same speed, that's okay, but it definitely has to keep going or else your weight is going to come back up and meet where your mindset is. So no matter what you're doing or what you've done in the past to drop the weight, you need to make sure that you've tackled the mindset and the psychological reasons as to why you struggled with weight in the first place. So a few quick things that could be impacting you. Could be emotional eating out of stress, out of boredom, out of addiction, binging, certain triggers, recognizing those. It could be this deprivation mindset, the inner dialogue. I'll never be able to keep this weight off. It's so boring. It's not fair. I want to eat how my husband eats. I want to eat how my wife eats. I want to eat how my neighbor eats. None of those comments or thoughts, that inner dialogue is serving you. Remember that saying no to certain foods is a form of self-respect. That dropping weight is a process of letting go, including those foods that no longer serve you, that you say you love, that don't love you back. It's about subtracting the things that don't serve you anymore, right? Subtracting, I did a whole episode that you should listen to on subtracting what doesn't serve. Subtracting things are more beneficial than adding any hacks. So for example, removing soda from your diet is going to get you much more benefit than adding a supplement that helps you with blood glucose control. That's one example. Removing Netflix from your evening routine is going to give you much more benefit than wearing blue light blocking glasses while you watch Netflix till 2 a.m. Those are some examples of subtracting what doesn't serve. Mindset matters. I did a whole episode on your mindset and a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, and understanding that the words that you use, how you speak to yourself, have more impact than anything in your life. So you need to check in with that inner dialogue and might need to make a U-turn in how you're speaking to yourself. Another reason why we might put the weight back on is unrealistic expectations. This can lead to feelings of failure and trigger a return of your unhealthy eating patterns. Another that goes into this is poor body image, and I have a story that represents this. So I was sitting with a client a while ago, and her name's Valerie. And she had about 80 pounds to drop. And when I chatted with her early on, I asked her what was her why. And she was a photographer. And she said with these 80 pounds packed on her body, she couldn't get into the position she needed to take the best pictures. And it was just impacting her form of art and her creativity. And she hated that. She also really wanted to travel to Alaska and go photograph the animals up there and go on a specific trip that she felt she couldn't do with the 80 pounds on. So she dropped 50 pounds in record time. Like her average was 2.5 pounds a week. She was down 50 pounds and I chatted with her. I was like, Valerie, oh my gosh, congratulations. Amazing. What do you think? She's like, well, I have planned my trip to Alaska. It's scheduled. Super excited about that, but I'm not happy with myself. And I said, well, how could you not be happy with yourself? She's like, when I look in the mirror, I still see cellulite. And that's all she could focus on. All she could focus on was the fact that her legs didn't look like the perfect image. They didn't look like Taylor Swift in the mirror, Carrie Underwood. It just totally ruined her experience. She couldn't stack any wins because she was blinded by the cellulite on her legs, which, by the way, might never leave because some of us just have cellulite. Even at our optimal weight, we have that darn cellulite. So I just share this story with you to get in check with your unrealistic expectations. Get in check with your body image and if it's holding you back, because who cares about the cellulite, really. I know we do, but it's just so superficial when really she should have been ecstatic about the amazing wins that she made and the fact that she was going to Alaska, which is a once-in-a-lifetime experience to do what she loves to do. So she had a great time, by the way, and really dove in and worked on her body image and her unrealistic expectations. Lack of support is another huge reason why we might put the weight back on. Humans are social creatures. We need community. Community, I've said this before, is the number one thing that influences our behaviors, our mindset, our ability to achieve results. And PhD client success rate is so high with those who participate in maintenance because of the community, the accountability, and the support. You can see those commonalities between all the people who were checking in monthly, who were reporting to us, who were committed to this as a lifestyle change versus the ones who just, got busy with life or whatever kind of excuse or procrastination. And I'm not saying that it's not real. It is real. But we have to take this as a huge priority, and I want you to understand the impact of support. Dropping weight on our own is hard enough, but maintaining it on our own is even harder. So I encourage you to get a support system, a friend, a community, or someone who can hold you accountable and stick with you during the hard times. Another reason why we might put the weight back on, this is the last one I'll go through, is if we're stuck in the past. If we're wiring and firing old stories and beliefs. You recreate your past over and over again if you wire and fire these old stories and beliefs. To be liberated from the past, you've got to move through the old stories. You've got to think and feel differently. You've got to change that emotional state. And to do that, you can get out and move. You can go outside and see the sun. You can listen to music. I was just with a group of PhD clients and I asked them, how do you change your emotional state if you're stuck in stress, if you're wiring and firing these old stories and beliefs? And 100% of them said that they get out and move. And whatever that means to you, if it's going out and going for a light walk, if that means getting on your bike, if that means going golfing, if that means moving and painting or doing something that's creative and moving your body, if it's dancing, listening to music, they all, 100% of them talked about moving their body to change their state. Let's dive into some strategies for long-term maintenance. And these strategies come from a systematic review of successful weight loss maintainers and what their commonalities were. So one, they ate regular breakfast and it seemed to reduce their potential for overeating later in the day, a protein-forward breakfast like I always talk about. They did some kind of physical activity in the morning and it set the tone for the day. It might be waking up and just going again for a light walk, or it might be getting your workout in first thing in the morning. That's what they did. They had a consistent wake up time and a consistent sleep time. They were consistent in their routine. They stayed hydrated. There's a lot of research looking at the impact of staying hydrated. A lot of people say half your weight in ounces of water, and some say half your weight plus 30 ounces in water. Either are fine, but something within that range. They all did some kind of mindfulness practice, if it was prayer or journaling, reading the Bible, if it was meditation, but somehow they set intentions for the day and they were mindful around it. They had goal setting and planning in place. They would either write down and monitor what they ate throughout the day, or they would potentially plan what they were going to eat for the next day ahead of time. They selected nutrient-dense food choices and realized that all calories are not equal, but focusing on the foods that serve them and letting go of the foods that don't. They exercised cognitive restraint, which means that they said no to certain foods, either the type of food, the amount of food, and when they were eating, there was some kind of restraint there. They all had support, accountability, and community. They prioritized self-care over screens. This is a big one these days. We have screens everywhere and we get sucked into them and they're addicting. And you have to be stronger than your environment. You have to be stronger than your screens and make sure that you prioritize self-care. And that could be, for example, in the morning, do not allow yourself to look at screens or watch the news or look at social media for at least 1 hour after waking up. And then they self-monitored their progress. If they popped up in weight, they error correct early on. That's really what we do at PhD. We hold people accountable and then we error correct before it becomes too tricky. And it's never too tricky, but before it becomes arduous, right? Imagine if you popped up and it was only 5 pounds that you needed to drop. You could do that in 2 weeks, no problem. And then they celebrated the wins. They celebrated the fact that they had achieved and are maintaining huge achievements. I really hope that this episode helps you. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a review and follow us. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. It helps us reach more people and impact them in a positive way. And then leave your comments below. Have you ever relapsed? Are you in a relapse state and do you need help? Use this as a community. Please recognize that in this channel, you have a community here. I want you to feel that even though we can't see each other. Let's tune into the energy that we have together and support one another. Remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.